specify that to them. Or maybe they missed a step, they didn't put the address, so we'll ask them, can you provide an address? But then we approve or deny it depending on what their ask is.
Okay. How did the GPS unit handle situations of emergency?
So we classify an emergency as a life-threatening event. So if they are at home or at work or maybe at an approved location that we already approved for them to be at, then most likely if it's life-threatening, they're being transported by ambulance. Once they get there, we automatically get a alert saying unscheduled leave. So we look into that. Sentinel, the third-party company, will call them. Then they'll call us at the office and be like, hey, did you see that this person had an unscheduled leave? We will then attempt to call them ourselves and try to figure out where they're at and why they're doing what they're doing. We'll look into their actual location data. If they're showing at a hospital, we'll call up to the hospital, see if they have that person there. If they're showing somewhere else, then we'll consider that a violation. We'll send them an email. We'll make all attempts to contact them to find out what's going on.
Okay.
All right, and just one moment. Can I see parties and chambers briefly? And also you, Mr. Cohn? All right, so States, you may continue.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Smith, were you on duty on December 4th, 2025?
Can you give me the weekday?
This is a Thursday.
Yes, ma'am.
What were the hours of your shift on that Thursday?
7 a.m. to 3 p.m.
How does the GPS unit handle a situation or handle the monitoring after 3 p.m. if you're not on shift?
So we do have on-call officers at that time, and then we also have that third-party sentinel that is monitoring and observing the data 24/7.
To your knowledge, did Mr. Cantu have an unapproved leave on or about December 4th?
And object, that calls for hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, I'll move on. I have something else. May I approach?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, state would move to admit into evidence would have been marked as States Exhibit 2 through 5 under Texas Rules of Evidence 8036 and 90210.
No
Okay.
objections.
All right, States Exhibits 2 through 5 is admitted without objection.
Thank you. Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Granted.
Okay, Ms. Smith, are you familiar with an individual activity report?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that?
The pattern report will show, unless it depends which report you're looking at, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm talking about this individual activity report. Can you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What is the client name here at the top?
Erik Cantu.
Okay, what is the client ID? Can you make that out?
Judge, can we approach?
Are they unique to each participant?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, at the top here, we see an address. Is it page 3? Well, actually, let me back up. So on this document, there are headers. What do these respective headers mean? So the first one being posted time.
That's gonna be the time that an event occurred and was put onto our notes in the DNA database.
And what is the event time?
The time that the GPS actually gave that data to the algorithm for the dashboard.
Okay, and then the event is what?
It could be many different things of what the monitor was doing at that time, if the subject did something to the monitor, whatever the event was, everything has an actual name to it, a layman name.
And then the comments column is what?
Is gonna either be a comment inserted by myself, an automatic one that the system produces, or a comment entered in by a Sentinel employee.
And I want to direct your attention to page 3. Can you please tell me the date and time that the pen is pointed at?
December 4th of 2025, 10:59 and 48 seconds.
Okay, and what is the event listed in that same column?
That's gonna be an unapproved leave. So the monitor has left its zone. It is no longer located where it should intended to be.
Okay, and then 2 rows down, we see a comment. What is this comment pertaining to? Who entered this comment, I guess is my question.
That would be a Sentinel officer?
Okay, and this comment lists a phone number, correct?
Correct.
Do you know whose phone number this? Did you learn of this unapproved leave?
Daily duties, logging into the DNA database. All activity is shown with icons. And in those icons, I do a investigation of sorts to see what they mean, and try to figure out what's wrong with the monitor. The monitor told, it has indicated that something is wrong, and it is my job as a deputy to figure out what is actually wrong.
So once you learned of that unapproved leave, what did you do?
So I click on the icon and the icon will take me to his client page. On that page, I can look at his location, I can look at his schedule that is inputted, and I can look at the equipment. This unapproved leave, I need to focus on his schedule. What is he scheduled out to do or plan to do that's been verified and approved? And then the second thing is, where is he at the present moment? So when I click on it, I look at the location. I saw that he was presently at home, but the time of the unapproved leave makes me run a stop report. Looking at the stops report, I can identify the addresses of where he stopped at, and for how long and the length of time. And then using their algorithm in Google, identify the places at which he stayed or went to.
Okay, now you mentioned a stops report. What is the stops report?
A stops report is a GPS algorithm that the monitor communicates to, when that monitor has stopped at a location for a length of time that I can change the duration of, I can run a 0 minute, 1 minute, 2 minute, however long you like for those minutes to be processed at. We usually run it at a 2 minute duration because we can then indicate that they've at least stopped somewhere. And that report will run different addresses for us. And those addresses are usually buildings, locations, parks, bus stops, and we can get a good story before I call the inmate to figure out where they currently located, what were they doing. So I have actual data before I ask a question.
Okay, did you do that here?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you make contact with Mr. Cantu yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you successful in that contact attempt?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now I'm gonna show you State's Exhibit 4. Is this a stops report you were speaking of?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the time interval here at the top?
That is the interval of which I can select the date range and actual time frame that I want to pull a report for.
And this report is associated with which participant?
This would be Erik Cantu's stop report.
Okay. Now I want to direct your attention to page 10. About 13 rows down, we can see that Mr. Cantu visited
11:16 and 48 seconds p.m.
Okay, and in this duration column, what does that show?
That he was at that specific address for 5 minutes and 59 seconds.
Now we can see in this address column, some of the addresses have an asterisk. What does that asterisk mean?
The GPS data, the satellite imaging, just located that pinpoint. That was the closest one to the monitor. So it may not have picked up an address in that it might be a field, it might be a new building, it could be a new road or a congested area of a lot of signals going through. The GPS satellite imaging just picked a closest location or closest address. So that address may not be the exact address that he may have been at, but it is going to be the closest identifiable address with GPS technology that we have.
Okay, now in row 13, under the address column, we see the absence of an asterisk. What does that tell you based on this information?
That he was at that address.
Okay, and in rows 12 and 14, this address, is that the address on file for Mr. Cantu?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so there is a location he visited other than his home, is that correct?
Correct.
How accurate does the GPS location track?
It is about 16 feet.
And how does that, I guess, is it conducted through GPS satellites?
Correct.
Ms. Smith, what is a points report?
A points report takes each location by the latitude and longitude and calculates a speed.
And the speed is of their movement?
The speed of movement in between 2 points that the satellite image was able to pick up.
I'm gonna direct your attention to page 14 of State's Exhibit number 5. So on this, I guess, interval shown, we see that Mr. Cantu is at the same address throughout this page, except for the bottom 2 columns. Is that correct?
That is not shown. That is not shown.
It is not shown that he remains at the same address for majority of these rows, except for the last 2?
It is now, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what time does Mr. Cantu leave his home residence?
10:55 and 49 seconds p.m.
Okay, and then what is the time of the entry beneath that?
10:58 and 48 seconds PM.
And what date is that on?
That is December 4th of 2025.
Okay, now I'm gonna show you page 15. Does Mr. Cantu's GPS monitor remain in motion? On the first column at 11:01.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then we see 2 columns down, we get an asterisk at the address, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then at what time does Mr. Cantu arrive at the 13 Country Pike address?
Finally is at 0 speed, which means it's not in motion anymore.
Okay, and it receives a 0 motion at approximately what time?
11:40 and 49 seconds PM.
Okay. So when you contacted Mr. Cantu, what did he tell you was the reason for leaving his home address?
He needed to go pick up his daughter for an emergency situation.
Okay, and did Mr. Cantu ever provide you documentation of said emergency?
No, ma'am.
Did he go into specifics regarding whether he was the only individual that could tend to this emergency?
No, ma'am.
Okay, were you aware that Sentinel was able to make contact with Mr. Cantu?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you review those notes prior to contacting Mr. Cantu yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
Why did you do that?
That's part of my daily duties.
Okay, I'm gonna play State's Exhibit number 2.
For Erik Cantu?
Yes, this is Eric. I'm on the way. I have an emergency to pick up my daughter.
Okay, and are you going back home afterwards?
I'm going straight back home. I'm just going down the street 10 minutes, or it's about like 13 minutes, and then I'm coming.
I'll go ahead and make that, and if your daughter's okay, and you guys have a wonderful weekend.
Yes, ma'am, you too as well.
And thank you. Bye.
Now, when you spoke to Mr. Cantu, was his call with Sentinel consistent with what he explained to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you form an opinion as to whether a GPS violation occurred on December 4th, 2025?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you base that opinion on?
The records and the data.
And what is your opinion as to whether a violation had occurred?
My opinion is that a violation did occur of an unscheduled leave that in around 11 PM that day on December 4th, 2025.
And is that a violation of the conditions that Mr. Cantu was to follow?
Yes, ma'am.
I pass the witness, Your Honor.
Defense?
So that was Eric's voice on the phone, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You recognize it?
Yes, sir.
You don't have any reason to believe he was trying to pull a fast one?
No, sir.
And he said he's going about 10 minutes and he's coming straight back home, and your records indicate he did exactly that, correct?
Correct.
In fact, the location he went to, do you know what's at that location?
An apartment building.
Did you know that's where his one-year-old daughter was residing?
No, sir.
Now, you talk about emergencies. So if I'm on your monitoring and it's 11:30 on a Thursday night, and I'm trying to find out is my daughter okay, but I can't get an answer. Who is there a number I can call? Can I call you at home or your cell phone? How do I reach you to say, hey, I need to run and check. I'll be right back.
Yes, sir. There's 2 emergency contact lines every defendant gets. They can call 24 hours, 7 days a week. They can leave a voicemail. They can text. It's a cell phone.
Now, they're not always answered, are they?
I would say they're most answered, yes.
Well, let's look at what Sentinel DNA says about this. Called Bear County Sheriff's, no answer. Called Bear County Sheriff's, no answer. Called Bear County Sheriff, no answer. Next page. I mean, so it's not, the phone numbers aren't always answered, are they?
Not all the time, no.
Okay. So now you said if it's life-threatening event, that would be an emergency for you.
Yes, sir.
So you have children?
I do.
Okay, when your child was 1.5, if that child was somewhere else and you thought something happened to that child at that age, and the child certainly can't care for herself or himself, would that be a life-threatening event potentially for that child?
It could be.
Okay. And in someone like in Erik's situation, if he can't get hold of you and he's concerned because my daughter lives here, nobody's answering the phone, she's supposed to be there, I can't find her, I'm worried. Does it seem like an inappropriate thing for a parent of a 1-year-old to do to go check on their child?
If it were me, I would call 911.
Okay, because you're familiar with the police, and I'm assuming the police haven't shot you.
Correct.
Okay. So if you're someone who has been shot by the police and perhaps are a little concerned about what effect, what help they may get, if any, running down the street, telling the officer that calls, hey, here's exactly what I'm doing, I'll be right back home, that's the next best thing, isn't it?
I wouldn't speculate to that.
Okay. But that's what happened in this case. He answered the phone. He gave his name. He said, here's what's happening. I'm going to go check on my daughter. I'm going straight back home, right?
He answered the phone to a third party. He never did call our office.
To your
or-
knowledge.
To our knowledge, yes.
Well, if a Sentinel called and y'all didn't answer at least 3 times that day, after this event. So, so the emergencies, those aren't violations, correct? If there's a life-threatening event or something that is perceived as a life-threatening event, that would qualify as a non-violation?
Not all the time. We just report and we monitor and report to either a probation officer or the court, and they will make that determination as we are deputies. So we have impartial judgment and we fill our reports out and send them off.
So, and what was your impartial judgment on this? You thought he was not telling the truth?
I had no opinion of the time. I knew that he had an unscheduled leave of his GPS monitor,
Okay.
and
You knew where he said he was going to check on his child, correct?
he said, he did state that.
Okay, did you do some investigative work to verify that in fact that's where his child lived? The address he went to?
I am not a detective or an investigator, sir.
Well, how hard is it to say, hey, who lives at that address? Call that, can I have a phone number to verify that's where the kid is? I mean, that wouldn't be, you've been with the force for a while.
Correct.
You seem like you have a working knowledge of the police department, or excuse me, the sheriff's department. You certainly could have verified whether or not that's where the child resided, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but you chose not to do so.
That was not part of my duties that
Okay.
day.
Would it surprise you to know that's where the child lived?
It would not.
Would it surprise you to know the child was supposed to be there then?
It would not.
Would it surprise you to learn that when he got there, the child wasn't there?
As a mother, yes, it
And
would.
and as a mother, that would give you concern, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I had, Judge.
No further questions, Your Honor. It's
All right.
from the state.
Excused?
Yes.
All right, you may step down. If you'll leave the exhibits with the court reporter, please.
Yes. ma'am. The exhibit. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, who is Is the next witness?
Judge, one more and then
Thank you.
state calls Wilder Garcia.
All right, there should be a square microphone up there. If you just put it somewhere, it's for the court reporter to hear. Yes. All right, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can lower your hand. If you'll make sure you keep your voice up so everyone can hear. If you'll state your name for the record.
Officer Wilder Garcia, WILDERGARCIA.
All right, state you may proceed.
How are you presently employed, Mr. Garcia?
With the San Antonio Police Department,
How long have you been employed with the San Antonio Police Department?
a little under a year and a half.
Are you a certified peace officer?
Yes, ma'am.
What training is required to become a certified peace officer?
Just basic training through San Antonio Police Department or Police Academy.
What has been your assignment over the past year and a half?
The past year and a half, I've been on patrol, assigned to North Patrol C shift.
What are the hours of C shift?
2200 to 06 in the morning.
Is that 11 or what is 2200 in normal time?
10 o'clock at night, ma'am.
10 o'clock to, you said 6 a.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your current assignment the same?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What are your duties as part of North Patrol?
My duties include taking calls for service, taking traffic accidents and traffic stops.
Were you on duty on December 4th, 2025?
Yes, ma'am.
What? Were you in uniform on December 4th, 2025?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you in a marked patrol unit?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you working alone or did you have a partner on that date?
On that date, I was in my patrol vehicle by myself.
Are you familiar with the case under SAPD 25246217?
Yes, ma'am. I wrote the report for it.
What case is that?
The report was a burglary.
Okay, how did you become involved in that case?
The caller called and called saying that's
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
Without getting into any specific statements, how did you become involved in that?
I made
case?
contact with the caller that called 911.
Were you dispatched?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what location were you dispatched to?
Time I was dispatched to the Valero gas station on the corner of Bitters and 281.
Is that in Bear County?
I'm sorry.
Is that in Bear County?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you equipped with body worn camera on December 4th, 2025?
Yes, ma'am.
To your knowledge, was it functioning properly?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
This video. Officer Garcia, I need you what has been pre-marked as State's Exhibit 6. Do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am.
What is it?
It's my body worn camera footage.
How do you recognize it?
I initialed and I put my badge number on the bottom.
Have you viewed the contents of it?
Yes, ma'am.
Other than to comply with the rules of evidence, has it been altered or amended in any way?
Not to my knowledge, no.
At this time, Your Honor, State would move to admit what has been marked as State's Exhibit 6 into evidence.
No objection.
Right.
My understanding is there's no audio, so as long, that's what I've been, I have every reason to believe she's honest, so as long as there's no audio, I don't object.
All right, State's Exhibit number 6 is admitted without objection.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Granted.
Now, when you arrived to that gas station, what did you do first?
Made contact with the caller at the time she was in her vehicle.
Do you recall what the vehicle looked like?
It was a red four-door. Can't remember what type of vehicle it was though.
So this is when you arrived, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And this is the car of the
Yes, ma'am.
caller. What did you do after you spoke to her?
After I spoke to her, I waited for my cover to arrive, and then we got the address of her apartment, and we went over to her apartment.
Do you recall the address of the apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm handing you what has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 7. Can you please refresh your memory and let me know when you've done that? The address of the alleged incident location. You moved to that location?
Yes, ma'am.
Approximately how far from the Valero to that location was the drive?
Like a 2-3 minute drive.
Now, do you recall the street names by the apartment complex that you went to? And then what did you do once you arrived to the apartment?
We went to go open the door, caller tried opening it. She couldn't open it, so my cover opened it for her, and then we proceeded to clear the apartment, make sure nobody else was inside.
Okay, so I have your body worn camera paused here. Do you see the cursor on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the name of this street? Do you recall? Do you recall the apartment number? Why did you clear the apartment?
Due to the nature of the call, it was a burglary.
Objection, that's hearsay.
That'll be sustained.
Okay. When you entered the apartment, did you locate anybody inside?
No, ma'am.
When you were at the apartment, did you observe any signs of forced entry?
No, ma'am.
During your investigation, did you locate any potential suspects?
No, ma'am.
What did you do after you cleared the apartment?
After we cleared the apartment, spoke with the caller, just got her statement. And after speaking with her, then I proceeded to call to make my notifications. As in call property crimes, night CID, and my supervisor.
Why did you call Night CID?
Night CID, I called them first due to the information provided, because it was because of the suspect. Night CID told me to call property crimes, so I called property crimes, let them know, and then later after that, I called my supervisor.
Okay, so with an offense like this, is property crimes the follow-up unit that typically handles this kind of case?
Yes, ma'am.
When you spoke with the caller, what was her demeanor?
She seemed very manic at the time, like very manic. She was talking very rapidly. I was very worried.
I pass the witness, Your Honor.
All right, defense?
I'm sorry, did you say no signs of forced entry?
That's correct, sir.
No one, you didn't find anyone inside the apartment?
That's correct.
And after you were told, or you know what an IDR is? Incident Detail Report.
Yes, sir.
And so according to what you just said, and corresponding with your IDR, because of who might be involved, you were told to write a burglary rehabilitation report at the very least. That was what, I guess, what Terraza told you to do. Is that correct?
Not that I remember, sir.
That's all I have.
Any further questions?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor. This witness is excused.
All right, is this witness excused?
Yes, Judge.
All right, thank you. If you'll leave the microphone behind and whatever exhibits, if you'll leave those with the court reporter. All right, and this is your next witness? All right, so state who's going to be your next witness?
Your Honor, at this time, the state intends to call Emily Prue, who has been subpoenaed to appear and give testimony in this cause at this setting.
All right, and so it's my understanding that an attorney, based upon what the state and the defense, the evidence or information that the state and the defense gave to the court appointed an attorney to represent this witness. And it's my understanding, and this happened in the presence of the state and the defense, that the attorney for the witness is going to object to that witness testifying. Is that correct?
Yes, sure.
All right, so for the record, this witness is alleged to be?
Her name is Emily Prue. She's the complainant and the bird hag that's alleged as the violation of condition number 1 in the MTR. And that case is awaiting indictment with the TA's office as well.
All right, so that the record is clear, that's who this witness is, and that witness's attorney has an objection to her be testifying. So I'm assuming you want to quash the subpoena?
Judge, yes, I'd like to speak with you about that. I have one objection to make, and then I also would like to inform the court if you overrule that objection of what my advice is to my client if she were to testify.
Okay. All right, then let's start there, and I'll hear your objection, and then state you'll have a chance to respond, and defense, you'll have a chance to respond as well.
So for the record, my name is Meredith Chacon. The court, as you said, appointed me, I think 2 settings ago to represent Ms. Prue and advise her about whether or not she should testify today. The state did provide to me certain documents and evidence to review. One of those was what purports to be a grand jury summons that was improperly issued because it was issued under the 2024 CR 1237 cause number. A grand jury subpoena is not a proper subpoena by which to.
Excuse me, I'm just one moment, off the record for a second. Norma, Mr. Thompson, do you live out of state or out of county? Austin? All right, Norma, he can appear by Zoom. And since I'm allowing you to appear by Zoom, or even if you have to appear in person, court starts at 9 a.m. Do you understand? All right, so they'll have you sign the reset form and it'll note that you can appear by Zoom. All right, we're back on the record. You may continue. What was the number for the grand jury summons?
2024 CR 1237. So this grand jury summons ordered her to appear before the grand jury on a post-conviction, a case that's already been adjudicated and is now on probation, which is improper, and for her to appear on the 22nd day of January 2026 before a grand jury. That was where she was served with the subpoena for this case. So they used a subterfuge to subpoena my client for this. Then when she was interviewed by the district attorney, she was threatened with going before the grand jury and being thrown in jail if she didn't want to talk to the district attorney. I know that because that's in the notes that were provided to me from the district attorney, who is not these fine prosecutors who are here today, Judge. She was also told when she asked if she could have a lawyer that she didn't need a lawyer. She didn't need to consult with a lawyer and that she'd done nothing wrong. Why would she need a lawyer? But then at the end of the conversation, they were also talking about her being incarcerated if she refused to talk to them. I would also like the court to take judicial notice that my client has filed an affidavit of non-prosecution in this case. She does not wish to testify. The subpoena ordering her to appear today was obtained by fraud because a grand jury subpoena should not have been used to bring her in to speak to the prosecutors. That was an attempt, I believe, to avoid discovery of the defense because grand jury subpoenas are secret. Had they subpoenaed her properly in this case, the defense would have known that she was coming in to talk and they would have had to turn over those notes. I also feel like they have threatened her with perjury. They have threatened her with incarceration if she refuses to testify. And because of that, and because I would have to trust this district attorney's office to know what the truth is and what the truth is not, I'm going to advise her to plead the Fifth Amendment if she does take the stand, because I don't know if they would later charge her with perjury if she said something they didn't agree with. And again, I'm not speaking to these two prosecutors directly, but to the administration that is driving this train.
All right, so the record is clear. Defense counsel is not speaking of any actions that were done by the prosecutors who are physically in this courtroom. That's correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And that includes Mr. Moray?
Yes.
All right, so let's start with one, the grand jury summons in 2024 CR 1437. Defense says that summons was improper. Mr. Moray, are you going to do the argument, or who's doing the argument with regards to that?
I'll go ahead and do that, Judge. So regarding the grand jury subpoena, I've reviewed it, and just so the record is clear, I'm not the prosecutor that one ever met with the witness prior to today. And two, I'm not the prosecutor that issued that grand jury subpoena. However, I don't believe that Ms. Chacon has standing to contest that subpoena. The court is able to review it. It was issued in the case that we're here for today. That is an indicted case, so I'm not disputing that. However, if we're looking at the case, what has been turned over to both parties is that an investigator from the district attorney's office went to the residence of Emily Prue and served her with this grand jury subpoena. And so it's kind of like an inevitable doctrine of like, we had her address, we're able to secure her and serve her with a subpoena, and that's standard routine in cases that are prosecuted by this office. Many witnesses are issued subpoenas to appear, and so she has been subpoenaed for this cause, under this cause number, with the correct subpoena ducis tecum to appear today to give testimony. And so I don't believe that Ms. Chacon has standing to challenge that. She wasn't representing her at the time. And I think that we would need additional testimony from the witness for the court to determine the allegations, I guess, that are set there for.
So I want the record to be clear, and I want my understanding to be clear. So was there first a grand jury subpoena? And then while I'm assuming, and if my assumptions are incorrect, let me know. I'm assuming that the witness appeared for the grand jury subpoena, under the grand jury subpoena?
Judge, so it's my understanding, and I'm gonna have my co-counsel print out the subpoenas, but it's my understanding that at the time that the DA investigator went to serve the witness, Emily Prue, that she was served with a subpoena ducis tecum and a grand jury summons. Yes.
Okay.
And I'm unsure of the date of the subpoena ducis tecum. They'll have to look it up. I asked your coordinator this morning. She couldn't find it.
So this is what the court wants to know. Number one, was she issued with a grand jury subpoena? And then while she was honoring the grand jury subpoena, was she then given another subpoena? That's what I want to know.
And Judge, if I could just have leave from court because my computer's not cooperating with me.
Yes.
To print out the
Okay,
subpoenas of the issue, please.
sure. And then after I receive evidence with regards to those questions, then we'll move on to the allegations of the threat. And what I can tell both parties, the allegation of the threat, I'm going to need to hear from the witness with regards to any allegations of threat.
Says they threaten.
Judge, and I think there's enough in the document that was given to us by the prosecutor that conducted the interview that I think clearly shows that.
All right, well, you know, if y'all want to admit that for purposes of this hearing, for me to decide whether or not your objection should be sustained or not, I need to see that.
Oh, you served her twice then?
Yeah. You said.
No, I mean, I thought you said he served her at the same time with both.
It does, it says here, it was,
He says it was served on the 14th, doesn't it?
yes.
Not the 20th. Literally in the videos. The signed one, I think.
It says right here,
The 14th.
executed, witness my signature, 14th day of January, 2026, not 20th of
What
January.
date is the subpoena?
20 January.
20th or? I thought it said
But is it
22nd.
to appear on the 22nd? So.
Right.
Doesn't matter, I mean,
Yeah,
the
I
point
I
is you
thought
didn't
that one said
serve, you
22nd.
didn't, you served the grand jury subpoena first. Then you came back later with another.
On the video, he serves her with both.
Well, then,
We have a
you got some
video shooting.
explaining to do about his under oath about the 14th.
What's the one he gave us on Friday?
Oh, 16th. yeah.
Wait. Here's how we return this sign?
No,
Oh, it's this one. It was issued on the 20th. They don't have a return. Did they not file the thing? God, I thought that.
why did it say the 14th?
I thought it says the 16th.
Why did it say the 16th?
Well, that says the day it was issued, right? Witness this 16th, so that's when the ADA signed it. But there's no return.
I don't have the return one, maybe they do.
There's a sign, but there's no return.
Disconnect.
What is the subpoena?
I was trying to find it. Disconnect. Wait. And then hit connect automatically.
But when I saw this, I thought it's like. Hi.
Just for the break now.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Rick.
Messed up, so then I'll do it one more time.
No problem.
I see charge on the floor. I see.
Is the 116.
Thank you.
There's another one that was-
Here you are. You're welcome. Oh, can you let Norman know then not to have him brought over and he doesn't need to be dressed?
Yes, sure, I will do so right now.
Thank you. All right, have a good one.
It's okay. I'm ready whenever the court is ready.
All right. So. All right, so Vashon, I received a text message asking me if I would be judge at a mock trial tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Now, my heart, because it's children, want to say yes, but I had to say no because I teach that night. Plus, we're probably going to be in trial tomorrow. So, but I did volunteer somebody else who's here, so you'll find out about that. All right, we're back on the record. Is there anything you wish to add to your argument?
Yes, Judge, I was under the impression from viewing the documents earlier that the subpoena was issued on the date that my client was brought in under the grand jury subpoena. What has actually come to light is there's no return of service date on the grand jury subpoena, so I have no idea what date that was issued to her, but she did show up and talk to the prosecutor on the 22nd of January because she received this subpoena.
Okay,
The return on the trial subpoena or the MTR subpoena has the 20th of January as its date. So that was, I guess, 2 days before she had to come into the grand jury. Either way, I'm going to advise this witness to plead the Fifth Amendment if she is forced to testify. In no other case that I've heard other than a property crime case, does the DA's office want to proceed with an AMP. It's not a domestic violence case, except for the fact that this is a media case that has caused all sorts of embarrassment to the office, but it is wrecking this girl and she doesn't want to be here. I don't know how to mark this, but I have the notes that were provided by the prosecutor who interviewed her under the illegal grand jury subpoena, Melissa Alvin, and it lists out that she told her that she could be incarcerated if she wouldn't answer her questions, which I think is enough of a threat, Judge. But if everybody's seen this, do you mind if I?
okay, I think all parties agree that a witness cannot be threatened with incarceration.
That's correct, Judge, and my reading of it, I guess the court would need to do an in-camera inspection, or I don't have any objection to it being made part of the record, but that's not exactly what it states in there.
All right,
Such a witness asked what the repercussions would be for her failing to appear in accordance with the court order, and she was advised that if the judge saw fit, that she could be arrested and brought to court, and that is the law.
all right. So let's mark that as an exhibit so the court can review it. And
Cindy has that.
we'll mark it with a W for witness. And you can call it W1.
May I approach?
Yes. Any objections to the court reviewing W1 for purposes of this
No,
hearing?
Judge, I don't have any, but just, can we just all label with the same, so I had Q for motion to quash. But
I'm sorry.
Court is okay with it being labeled.
What did you want it labeled as?
Has Q,
All right, we can label it as Q,
Oh, that's fine. I don't care.
Q1.
correct.
All right, so then Q1 for the record, Ms. Chacon, what is Q1?
Q1 is the notes that were provided to myself, the prosecutors and the defense counsel from the prosecutor's interview of my client. I've taken many witnesses before the grand jury, Judge, and I've had those conversations with witnesses about what repercussions happen if they don't want to answer questions. That's not what I think this is. The girl asked for a lawyer. She was told she didn't need a lawyer. Then she was told that she might have, if you're not committing a crime, why would you need a lawyer? But then it's very strongly implied that if she's not telling the truth, she can be in trouble. She asked what would happen if she had to go before the grand jury. We're talking about a very young woman who's told she's going to go down and see a judge and maybe get arrested if she doesn't want to answer questions. I just don't think that's how you go about it. And I think that they knew they were pushing her. And today, to appear today, she knew she could get arrested if she didn't come. I mean, this is a very coercive environment that they're asking to put this witness on. And
All right, the court is going to review Q1 and then I can hear arguments.
Judge, and then just for the record, for the state side, we have CDT exhibits Q1 and Q2, which are copies of the subpoena ducis tecum that was served on the witness on January 20th of 2026, and then the grand jury summons is Q2 that was served on the same day, however, it's unexecuted. I have a copy of that.
All right, any objections? Defense? Any objections to the court reviewing those documents?
No, Judge.
All right, and it states Q1 and
Q2.
Q2 will be admitted without objection for purposes of this hearing. All right, so what the court is reading is that the subpoena ducis tecum was done on January 20th. The grand jury subpoena, which there's no return or anything on it, was January 22nd, 2026.
So it was for the witness to appear on January 22nd of 2026, because the execution part is not filled out. There is a video of our investigators serving both subpoenas on January 20th of 2026. And so, like I said earlier, it's not like we were procuring the witness under false pretenses. She was served at the same time with both subpoenas.
All right, so this is what the court doesn't understand, and perhaps people can help me with this. It appears that sometimes people believe a subpoena means you have to come to somebody's office, but a subpoena is really for a court, maybe for the grand jury. So this subpoena that she was under was for her to appear in court, was it not? Or was it a subpoena for her to appear in the DA's office, which?
It was a subpoena for her to appear in, so the subpoena ducis tecum reads as it's for her to appear for a setting for this MTR on January 27th of
Yes.
2022. And then the grand jury subpoena, if I can see it back, Judge.
Yes.
So then this was for her to appear before the grand jury on January 22nd of 2020.
All right, and then the information in Q1, the witnesses exhibit through her attorney is information by Melissa Alban, the ADA that was put in the system on January 22nd, 2026. All right, so what is it, what is everybody's understanding when somebody is subpoenaed or thinks there is a valid subpoena and they come to the DA's office, and when they come to the DA's office, they're asking to have an attorney? What is the law on that? Everybody's understanding of the law on that. If somebody is subpoenaed, whether they think the subpoena is valid or not, it appears that the subpoena, the grand jury subpoena, that's not done properly. It appears that maybe the witness thought that this was a valid subpoena. And then that witness comes to the DA's office. So what is everybody's understanding on the law of when somebody is subpoenaed? One, can they be subpoenaed? And that subpoena is you come to the DA's office.
Judge, I think almost fundamentally, the more important thing is when an attorney is dealing with an unrepresented person, you have a duty, you can't give that person legal advice. And so no one has any business telling anybody they're not entitled to an attorney in that moment. If she wanted an attorney, rather than give her legal advice, you don't need to talk to an attorney, you haven't done anything wrong. She should have at least been able to come down to court and have a judge determine whether or not she needed an attorney, because she was an unrepresented person. And that's just basic to us being lawyers dealing with non-lawyers in all sorts of cases. So I take issue with my client requesting an attorney and telling her she wanted time to hire an attorney, that she'd been trying to get an attorney, and being told, no, you will talk to me today. You don't need an attorney. Because that's not for that prosecutor to decide in that moment. That's not their job. And so this girl was sat there and unable to consult with legal counsel about what she was going to talk about, and then was told that if she didn't answer the question, she'd be taken before the grand jury and potentially incarcerated. And I feel like that's threatening.
All right, so what the court is reading from the witnesses Q1, it states that ADA Alban, it states, I began talking to her about the facts of the case, and she stated she didn't feel comfortable answering any questions without her lawyer, and she wanted to invoke her right to remain silent. I asked her if she had committed a crime, and she said no. So then I advised her she does not have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent if she has nothing to incriminate herself about. I asked her who her lawyer is, and she said she was summoned here With such short notice, she didn't have time to make arrangements for one. I advised her I had called the number in the police report, and then it goes on about the number maybe being incorrect. I let her know if she didn't want to talk to me about what happened the night of the burglary, we would go down to the grand jury and she would be asked questions in front of them, perhaps by them under oath. So first of all, if somebody is called before a grand jury, of course, the witness goes in maybe without attorney. But my question becomes, one, it appears that she's at the DA's office under what she thinks is a valid subpoena, which is the grand jury subpoena. And then she's requesting an attorney, and then she's being given legal advice by ADA Albon. Does anybody want to address that for the court?
Sure, Your Honor. There was a valid grand jury proceeding open in the burglary case. I believe it still is. I don't know the exact status of the case. And I do understand there's a typo where they put the current cause number on the top of the grand jury subpoena. I don't believe that that is a violation of law or gives anybody any standing to keep the witness off the stand in this case. And I think it would contort any statute or constitutional principle on the books.
Oh, and I'm so sorry. The court reporter needs to hear, so there's a square microphone. If you could put that on.
You bet. Second, as to the ability to consult with a lawyer, anybody is free to talk to a lawyer on their own time, under their own arrangements. But under the Code of Criminal Procedure, Emily, I don't know how to pronounce it. Emily Prue was not a target of the grand jury. She's a witness and she is the named victim in that case. Article 20A.258 of the Code of Criminal Procedure requires a suspected person or defendant to be given the option of consulting with counsel. It does not require anyone else. No one is allowed to take a lawyer in there. Generally speaking, witnesses who come to court, to the grand jury, they do not get the benefit of counsel unless they make that arrangement on their own time. And there is no law that says to the contrary. Emily does not have a Sixth Amendment right to counsel because she has never been suspected of any crime. She is not indicted of any crime. There is no complaint. We have no at-large file that I know of against her for anything. We are not pursuing any charges on false statements, any type of perjury. As far as we know, she made initial statements to the police officer that you can see on the video, but you cannot hear. So the crux of her testimony, the state has had from the impetus. So the reason why we can somehow suppress it through the witnesses urging baffles me. Mr. Cantu has no 3823 standing. He has no constitutional standing to keep a witness off the witness stand, just like no defendant has any general standing to prevent a witness from testifying. So did Miss Prue did not have a right to a lawyer. She could have talked to a lawyer on her own time, but the fact that it was inconvenient does not mean she gets to disobey a subpoena. Now, I believe what Miss Albin did is she gave her the option. You can talk to me or you can talk to the grand jury. And that's not unusual. Frequently, we will send subpoenas to witnesses and we'll say in lieu of or whatnot. So if a witness does not feel comfortable going before a grand jury and just wants to talk to the prosecutor, that's also fine. I believe I can understand it might have been uncomfortable. I understand that she has a fraught relationship with the man who's the defendant in this case. And I can understand that whether you're talking to a grand jury or a prosecutor or coming into court on subpoena is difficult, but because it's hard, that's not an excuse to disobey a subpoena. Finally, I'll say that the statements that were given to Miss Prue are true. If a witness has been served a subpoena and they're taken before a grand jury and they refuse to answer questions, we can go to a judge. And the appropriate thing in the vast majority of cases is to hold the witness in contempt, commit them to jail, fine them, what have you. So I believe those statements were true. And I guess finally, the last thing I will state is when we're talking about coercion the defendant in a criminal case, when he's accused, he has a right to resist compulsory process. No other person on the planet Earth, other than Erik Cantu in this case, enjoys that right. When we subpoena people, it's compulsory. And when they don't cooperate, a court such as yourself can hold them in contempt, and that is inherently coercive. And that's something that everybody who walks in that door and up to the seat right there is walking under. It is a compulsive process. The Constitution recognizes it such. Our statutory laws recognize it as such. So the fact that there's some coercion or compulsion here is of no concern for this court as far as whether this woman can offer relevant testimony as to whether this guy violated the terms of his probation. Thank you.
All right, so let me just, and I'll hear your argument. Let me just tell you what I take issue with. I take issue with people being subpoenaed, whether it be a grand jury summons or whether it be a subpoena to appear in court, and somebody thinking that that means, oh, that means you have to come to the DA's office. That's not what the subpoena is for. If you've been subpoenaed to go before a grand jury, then you're supposed to go before a grand jury. It's not a subpoena to come to the DA's office. And it's the same thing with the subpoena duces tecum. I've seen people do this before, but legally, when you get subpoenaed, it's for you to appear in court or to appear in grand jury. It's not you've been subpoenaed to appear in the DA's office. And I've seen that happen a lot. And that's not the law as it relates to that. But you've heard Mr. Morey's argument. Do you have a response?
Yes, Judge, two things. They both skipped an important step, and I think it's an important thing that you have to tell witnesses that you're going to take before the grand jury if you are a prosecutor. And that is, yeah, you do tell them we're going to go see a judge, but you have to tell them a judge is then going to decide if you have to answer those questions or not, and a judge is going to tell you whether you have to answer those questions or not. And then it's up to the person whether or not they want to follow that before they're held in contempt. Judge doesn't jump straight to contempt. To imply that if you don't answer my questions, you're going to end up in jail, it jumps over quite a few steps. And I think when you're dealing with someone who is as young as this girl is and is as intimidated as she was, that they knew exactly what they were doing when they did that. And then number two, you have a duty as an attorney not to advise an unrepresented person if they're asking for a lawyer. He's right. She had the right to consult with a lawyer. They didn't have to tell her, you can't do that right now. They told her you don't need a lawyer. That's not their judgment to make. To advise her she doesn't need a lawyer, it goes beyond the bounds of what the district attorney's office is supposed to do. Now you have a lawyer giving legal advice to an unrepresented person that's adverse potentially to them. They don't know what she needed to talk to a lawyer about. They don't know what she's about to say. She clearly doesn't want to talk to them. And the response is, you don't need a lawyer. We're not supposed to do that as attorneys. So she should have at least been given the opportunity to call someone. They could have rescheduled. They had a subpoena for like 2 days later for this hearing, the original setting. And as you said, it's not as her subpoena is not for her to show up at Ms. Albin's office. Take her downstairs to the grand jury and ask her the questions there, but don't give her legal advice. Don't blow her off and don't threaten her.
All right. Any response from defense counsel?
No, Judge, other than this is just another attempt at, I mean, this office for what, I mean, has come after Erik from the, I mean, since the day he was tried, you know, since the day SAVD tried to kill him, ever since then, they've come after him. And this is another example of anything they got to do, they're going to do to get Erik. And to bring in this, and Ms. Chacon hit it on the head. You, I mean, Morey says she has a right to a lawyer on her own time. Well, then give her time. Give her that option. Don't tell her it's now or never. We're going to arrest you. I mean, I just, it's sad to see that the lengths someone will go to get somebody. And I'm disappointed in the process. Not Ms. Galloway and not Ms. Espinosa, because I know they had nothing to do with that. But, and then to argue that the subpoena, oh, there's a typo. There's a case number on the subpoena. They picked that. I mean, it's not a typo. It's a, they brought her down under completely false pretenses. So once again, I mean, just on behalf of Erik, I ask you to consider what Ms. Chacon has said. That's all I have.
All right. This is what the court is going to do. The court notes that the subpoena duces tecum was actually filed and returned before the grand jury subpoena. So were there statements that were made to ADA Albon from the witness?
Judge, so that was my next point in this, okay, because there were statements that were made to Ms. Albon. And then there are the statements that were made to the police department, okay, and so. Should the court be entertaining this hoopla that's going on, okay? What the statements that were made to Ms. Albon they're consistent with what was reported to the police department, but what I'm submitting to the court is the statements that were made to the police department are admissible statements by the witness, because she did not invoke any, she voluntarily called police, she called 3 times. She voluntarily met with a police officer, she refused to enter her apartment until a police officer cleared the location. She did not request an attorney at that time, and so those statements are admissible in this hearing in compliance with the subpoena ducis tecum that was issued.
All right, this is what the court is going to do. The court is going to deny the request from the witness's attorney. However, any statements made to Ms. Albon will not be admissible in this hearing.
That's understood.
All right. So do all parties know what statements were made to Ms. Albon?
They're all contained in the witness exhibit Q1, Judge.
All right, so I'll give defense, because defense was shaking his head. I'll give defense a chance to review that. And if you could have a chance to review that with your client, and could I have parties approach?
Are you including me in your? Yes.
Recorder can hear you.
All right, state, call your next witness.
State calls Emily Crew.
All right, can you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you can lower your hand.
What clothing he's wearing?
Erik Cantu.
And can you describe like something that he's wearing on this person today?
Blue, blazer.
Okay. And how long have you known Erik Cantu?
I've known him since, early 2022.
Okay. And just so we're clear, you're not here today because you want to be, right?
No, I don't want to be here.
So you're here because the state issued you a subpoena to appear and give testimony, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And just to be fair, you care for Erik, correct?
Yes,
He's a father of your child and you don't want to see anything bad happen to him, correct?
yes.
Okay. But there are a couple of things that I have to ask you about, okay? So do you recall December 4th going into December 5th of 2025?
Yeah.
Okay. What were you doing on that night?
On my way to work,
Okay. And when you were on your way to work, what happened that caused you to look at your phone?
I plead the fifth.
Judge, you could instruct the witness.
All right, so the witness has pleaded the fifth to what the witness was looking at on her phone, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. After hearing the question, the court is not going to allow you to plead the fifth to that question. You'll need to answer that question.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Well, I had pulled over to go stop and get some food before I went. And I looked at my phone. I kept seeing notifications of link.
Okay. And the notifications that you were receiving, what app were they from?
Blink.
Okay. And at this time, what apartment complex were you living at, or what was your address?
The Harper at the Park,
Okay, and what was the address?
950 Bitters.
Okay. And at your residence, did you have some type of video recording system?
Yes.
Okay. And is that through Blink that you stated?
Yes.
Okay, and so what type of notifications were you receiving on your phone that caused you to look at the app?
Motion detected.
Okay, and where was that motion detected?
There's no label for where. It just shows that there's being motion detected somewhere. in
Okay.
the apartment.
So how many cameras did you have at your residence?
Doorbell and inside.
Okay, and so on this day, when you received those notifications from Blink, did you click into the app to view what was going on at your residence?
Yes.
Okay, now regarding the Blink subscription that you had, were you able to access past videos or were you only able to access live feed?
My free trial ended for the Blink to be able to see in the past. So that had already ended. So now it was only live footage.
Okay, and so when you accessed the live footage at your apartment on Bitters Road, what did you observe?
I saw my neighbors and Erik outside my door walking away down the stairs.
Okay, did you hear any voices at that time?
I was connected to CarPlay, so I couldn't get it to listen. I couldn't get it to play any sound. So I turned off my car and disconnected the CarPlay, and I just heard them have some sort of interaction, and that was it.
Okay, and so when you say them, because you have known Erik for quite a while, so are you familiar with his voice?
Yes.
Okay, and is one of the voices that you heard on the Blink camera, the voice of Erik Cantu.
Yes.
Okay. And so when you received or you saw that Erik Cantu was at your apartment, what did you do at that point?
Well, I first grabbed my food and then I drove to work, and I kind of just brush it off so I can just focus on work and not, pay any mind to it because I didn't really observe what had really happened. It was kind of just seeing motions and seeing that, and I just kind of was like, I don't have time for this.
Well, let me ask you this, was he supposed to be at your apartment on that day at that time?
No.
Did he ever live at that apartment with you?
No.
Okay. And so once you were at work and you were trying to push through, at some point, did you make a phone call to someone?
Can you please elaborate?
Yeah, okay, so when you were at work, at some point, did you call 911?
Yes.
Okay, and what did you report to 911 that had occurred?
That I saw my iPad at another location than from where I left it.
Okay, and so your iPad, how long have you had that, or how long were you the owner of that iPad?
Since July of 2025.
Okay, and did Erik Cantu buy that for you, or is that something that you purchased on your own?
That was my iPad.
Okay, and so before you went to work, where was the last place that you observed your iPad?
On my bed.
Okay, and is that in the apartment on Bittersburg?
Yes.
Okay, and so when you're at work, before you call 911, what did you recognize about your iPad's location?
That it was moving.
Okay. And so then when you called 911, the first time, or let me back up, did you call 911 more than one time?
Yes.
Okay. And so the first time that you called 911 and you initially tried to make a report, where were you?
Well, I didn't want to leave work, so I wanted to handle that without leaving, but they said I couldn't.
Okay,
I had to leave work in order to handle it.
okay. And so at some point, did you make the decision to leave work to make the report?
Yes.
Okay. And once you left work, where did you go after that?
To my apartment. Well, first the gas station.
Okay. And when you were speaking to the police, did you feel comfortable at that time returning to your apartment from work?
Yes, I just wanted to, or they had instructed me to meet at the gas station first.
Okay, you don't recall telling them that you didn't feel comfortable going back to the apartment?
I don't remember.
If I could just have a minute, please.
Yes.
I have a couple of things here. I have some headphones, so I'm gonna place these in front of you. At some point, I'll ask you to put them on, okay? So what I'm showing you is State's Exhibit number 23. It contains some phone calls. I'm gonna play a portion of them for you, and then I'm gonna ask you a question, okay?
Okay.
Or do you want to listen to it first, or what?
That's what it was.
Right. You can
Nick was nice enough to offer his advice.
See this cost so much.
Okay.
You can take the headphones off. Okay, so when you called 911, did you advise them that you didn't feel comfortable going back to the apartment at that time?
After hearing, yes, I did say that.
Okay, thank you. And so what location did you choose to meet with police officers at?
The Valero gas station close to my apartment.
Okay. And so after you met with the officers there at the Valero, did you then head to your apartment that was located on Bitters Road?
Yes.
And then once you arrived at your apartment complex, did the police arrive there with you?
Yes.
And did they kind of like search the location before you entered into the residence?
Yes.
And when you were in the residence, did you locate your iPod anywhere in the residence? Okay. Now. Judge, if I could just have a minute to
Yes.
enter some exhibits. So I'm gonna show you what has been marked as state exhibits 8 through 15. I'm gonna ask you if you can just take a look at these photos and tell me if you recognize what is depicted in each photo, okay?
My apartment door.
You can just look at them and then. You like look through them?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so are you able to recognize the items that are depicted in state exhibits 8 through 15 inclusive?
Yes.
Okay. And are they a fair and accurate depiction of your apartment and phone on the day of the offense?
A Farron.
Like, do they show your apartment as you observed it on the day that this occurred?
Yes.
Yes, like they haven't been changed in any way. That's how your apartment
No.
looked. Okay. At this time, state officers state exhibits 8 through 15 inclusive, which have previously been tendered to defense.
No objection.
All right, states exhibits 8 through 15 is admitted.
All right, Emily, so now I'm going to show you these photos and ask you what is depicted in each photo, okay? Are you able to see that? Don't worry.
My apartment door.
And in state exhibit number 9,
My living room.
state exhibit number 10,
My dining room.
and what is this with blinds?
What is what?
This surface that has blinds sliding across, what is that?
The rod.
What do the blinds protect?
From sunlight and the door.
Okay, so is there a door there?
Yes.
Okay, where does that door lead?
To the balcony.
State exhibit number 11. That's kind of hard to see. State exhibit number 12.
My lock.
Okay, and is that the lock to the sliding door?
Yes.
And that sliding door, is that behind those blinds that we saw in the previous state exhibit?
Yes.
State's exhibit number 13, what does that depict?
My balcony?
What about state's exhibit number 14?
Another picture of my lock.
Okay. When you had arrived to your apartment on that day, did you notice anything weird about your sliding door?
It was a little bit cracked open.
And state's exhibit number 15, what are we seeing here?
My iPad location.
Okay, and so I guess I'm assuming, do you have an iPhone?
Yes.
Okay, and so was your iPad and your iPhone connected to each other?
Yes.
Okay, and so were you sharing the location of your iPad and the iPhone with each other?
Yes.
Okay, and is that how you were able to obtain this screenshot of the location of the iPad?
Yes.
Okay, and what location was displayed as where the iPad was?
The 21010 Alsuela Bueno.
Okay, and who do you know that lived on El Suelo Bueno?
Is Eric's family?
Did Eric live there with his parents?
Yes.
And then while you were meeting with police officers, did you start receiving communication from Erik Cantu? Did he text you at some point?
While I was with the police, I don't remember.
Okay, did he ever communicate with you either sometime when you were with the police or after you made the report? Let me rephrase my question. From the time that you noticed that your iPad was moving from your residence until after you made the report, did Erik Cantu reach out to you?
Yes.
How did he reach out to you?
Text.
And did a police officer with the San Antonio Police Department obtain screenshots or photos of the text messages that were sent to you from here?
Yes.
I'm gonna show you what has been marked State's Exhibit 16 through 22. If you could just take a look at these like you did before, and look at them and tell me if you recognize what is contained within them after you look at them. So now that you've had an opportunity to look at State's Exhibit 16 through 22, do these appear to be a true or fair and accurate depiction of the text messages that you received from Erik Cantu?
Yes.
This time, Judge, the state offers State's Exhibit 16 through 22 inclusive and tendering to defense for inspection.
Any ones that show the full conversation, that don't have stuff whited out. Yeah. But what is that second thing? Yeah, one that shows that's not whited out. Right before she says have fun in jail.
You're the only one.
Yeah, oh. Is this somewhere else? The fingers aren't blocked. I don't think so. Oh, they got the beginning, okay. I put it back in order. Wise, you mean?
Yeah, so like, whatever you're looking at.
No objection.
All right, States Exhibit 16 through 22 is admitted without objection.
Emily, so in addition to you noticing that your iPad had a different location, were other people contacting you, or what was going on? What were the circumstances surrounding that caused you to have to like leave work to make this report?
My mother called. My friend called. So just
Were very, they were worried about her.
they were worried about me.
And were they responding to like messages that you sent them, or was somebody else contacting them?
Objection, that'll be hearsay.
That'll be sustained.
Did you ever contact like your mom or your friend that day
Back after they called me?
before?
Yes.
So did you send them something that they would have responded to?
I don't remember. I do not know.
That's okay. So turning back to the text messages, I'm going to publish Stacy Exhibit number 16. And that phone number that's listed there, who do you know that phone number to belong to?
Eric.
Okay. And in these text messages, can you kind of tell the court what's going on in these text messages?
I plead the fifth. I think it speaks for itself.
Okay, that's fair. In State's Exhibit number 17, Eric sends you a text message that says, why does your location say you're here? Do you see that? Okay, and so you weren't at your apartment, correct?
No.
You were at work, is that right? Okay. And in State's Exhibit number 16, which would proceed in time. And State's Exhibit number 16, it appears at 11:15. Eric texted you, open the fucking door. You recall seeing that?
Yes.
Okay. And then in State's Exhibit number 17, at 11:43, he said, why does your location say you're here? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And it appears that very strong language is being used against you in these State's exhibits. And then when we arrive at State's Exhibit number 21, it looks like you responded to him, you broke into my house, weird ass N-word. Is that what occurred on December 4th going into December 5th of 2025? That's what the text message said, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now on that day, did you ever give Eric permission to enter into your apartment?
No.
Did he have any way, like a key or anything to get into your apartment?
No, ma'am.
And did you give him permission to use your iPhone?
No.
Where was your daughter, she was with your mom on this day, correct?
Yes.
And does your mom kind of regularly help take care of your daughter?
Not really.
Not really, okay, but on that day, your daughter was with your mom?
Yes.
Okay. And while you were on the phone with police, your mom was, or when you were at the gas station waiting to speak with police, you were on the phone with your mom, is that correct?
Don't remember, maybe.
And then just going back to, in the third 911 call that you made, well, in the second 911 call that you made, do you recall stating to the 911 dispatcher that initially you were going to stay at work and report the offense in the morning, but this is starting to get really bad, so I needed to clock out and meet her. We have the witness, right?
So that night, you had been at Eric's house that day, right?
No.
No?
No.
You had been with Eric's house that day and then you left with the baby to go put your makeup on for work.
Yes.
Yes, so you had been at Eric's house.
No, I don't recall being at his house that day.
Have you seen Eric that day?
No.
Have you talked to Eric's mother that day?
No.
So her phone records that show a 30-minute call from you at 9:05 from your phone number. Who was using your phone number when it wasn't you for 30 minutes?
Well, if there was a phone call, I don't remember what it was.
Well, let's go back. Either you talked to his mom or you didn't. You said you didn't.
Well, I don't remember. I'm not into all those details.
Do you understand the importance of when I ask you a question and you say no, that infers it didn't happen versus if I ask you a question and now you're saying I'm not sure of the details, so
So can I plead the fifth?
you can do.
If
Sure.
I don't remember, if I'm not,
I'm not the one coming after you, it's the state. So don't worry about, don't worry about me. I'm not the one that threatened you. They did.
I am going to object as to argumentative. She is a victim in a case, and the state has a duty to see that justice is done for this defendant that continues to violate his probation.
All right.
So I don't appreciate allegations being slung over to this table when I wasn't even involved in what he is referring to.
All right, the objection will be sustained.
Did the state threaten to arrest you if you didn't answer their questions?
yes,
Okay. Now, your location says you were at your apartment. Was that because you had your location coming from your iPad instead of your iPhone?
please
Or-
elaborate the question.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. One of the messages seems to think that he says, why does your location say you're here? So I mean, I know you can have your location like show up on your iPad or your iPhone on that particular time. Was it at your iPad?
Yes,
Okay, so when he asked, so when he says, why does your location show you were here? If he had looked at where you were, where he thought you were, it would be your apartment, correct? Because your iPad was in your apartment.
yes,
Okay. And he was upset because of things he found on your iPad, correct?
more than that.
More than that? I mean, George who?
Object as irrelevant.
All right, that'll be overruled.
Who's George?
I'm not answering that. It does not matter.
Well, was it someone was it something he found on your iPad of you and George?
I plead the fifth.
And David Torres, is he also on your iPad?
Judge, I'm still gonna object as to relevance, what she's doing in her,
It's in evidence.
All right. well,
those are
could I-
statements that the defendant made, though, what she's doing in her free time, that he's.
May I see the exhibits, please?
May I approach?
Yes.
I'll move on, Judge, just to get this thing rolling. Now, that particular night, Eric thought the baby was with you, right? At least earlier in the day, correct?
Yes,
That'll be overruled.
And then Eric, according to your iPad location, would, you know, it would be safe for him to assume if you were with the baby and your iPad said you were at home, then he would think you were at home, correct?
Elaborate?
Well, on this particular night, Eric knew you thought, he didn't know your mother had the baby at that point, right?
No,
You hadn't told him that was your plan, correct?
no,
In fact, no, that's not correct?
it's correct.
Oh, that is correct, okay. And then in fact, as I understand it, you had originally talked to him during the day and he thought you were going to work later. You actually went in earlier than you were supposed to, or something like that, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So at some point, Eric is trying to look for you. And he sees that you're at your apartment. And then he calls you a couple of times. Do you answer any of those calls?
No,
Okay. And can you see if he thought you were home with the baby and why you didn't answer, why that might get him concerned?
sure.
Okay. I mean, he cares about his daughter, correct? I mean, I don't want to, does he participate in her life?
To an extent,
Okay. And does his family participate in her life?
yes,
Now, talk about the family. You lived with Eric and his family before this apartment, is that correct?
yeah,
And even sometimes during the apartment, you still stayed with Eric and his family. Is that also correct?
I think that's it.
All right, you'll need to answer that question.
The question was,
Did you stay with Eric and his family even after you had the apartment sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to trick you. I'm just trying to paint a picture of what was going on. Okay. Now, I thought you said that Eric didn't have a key. Did I understand that correctly? You had not given Eric a key when he helped you move in furniture that day?
help me move in furniture?
When you moved into the apartment?
No,
In fact, Eric and his mother were trying to help you get out of that apartment. Is that correct?
his mother, yes,
Because of some trouble you were having not related to Eric.
yes,
Okay. Now the iPad, so Eric knows the baby, he doesn't know where the baby is. Could he have thought the baby was with his mother?
no,
No, because you told him where the baby was?
no, because she would have told him and she lives in Austin.
Okay. And when you talked to her that night, you said you didn't remember talking to her that night?
No,
Is it possible you did and you just don't remember?
it's possible.
Okay. Is it possible that Eric was worried about you and the baby since you weren't answering the phone and he thought you were at the apartment?
Possibly.
And it makes sense that when he thought you were in the apartment and you weren't answering the phone and you didn't answer the door, one person could be more concerned, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Because at that point, he didn't know where you were, right?
yes,
And he didn't know where his daughter was.
yes.
And the iPad, is that the same iPad that, I know apparently you had pictures of you and these other guys on it, but there's also the iPad your daughter used to watch stuff when,
Yes, and guys plural. There was no guys plural.
I was just going off your text messages of Nate and George and the other guy. But this, like when my kids were very young, they would watch like Dora the Explorer or something. When, take them out to eat, you give them the iPad. Is that the same? Would this iPad also work for that, for her?
Yeah,
And did she use it a lot for that?
yeah.
Okay. And did you and Eric use that iPad together with her?
No,
There was never a time when you and Eric and your daughter watched something together? when y'all lived together with your daughter, the three of you never watched anything together?
Not on my iPad.
Is that because you didn't want him to see what was on it, or?
Object as to relevant.
Sustained.
Now, you said you originally, you called the police because you saw the iPad moving, right?
Yes,
And it was the police's idea, the police people, whoever it was, idea for you to meet at the grocery, at the Valero?
yes.
And it was that before or after they learned that his name was Erik Cantu?
Not too sure.
Well, did you tell them who you thought had your iPad?
Yes. So
And-
then, yes.
So yes, after they learned it was Eric, then they said, hey, let's meet at the Valero.
Yes.
And when you first saw, well, yeah, you said you were driving to work. And I guess you work a night shift somewhere?
Yes.
Okay. Because it was night, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you're driving to work and you get an alert for some movement on your phone and you pull over and you watch whatever the movement was, right?
Yes.
And whatever you saw didn't concern you enough to do anything because you still were going to go eat. You said first you got your food and then you went to work, right?
Yeah.
Because the alternative would have been to turn back around and go back to the apartment, right? How far were you from your apartment when you got that video?
20 minutes.
20
15
minutes? 15?
15 minutes.
Okay.
But mind you, I drove all the way to New Braunfels
For work?
to drop off my daughter.
But he didn't know that.
No.
And your location was at your apartment.
Yeah.
Okay. But I guess my point is what you saw on the video, Eric at your apartment didn't concern you enough to do anything at that point. You still got your food, you still went to work.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you call the police before or after Eric started messaging you? If you remember,
After.
if you remember.
After.
After. So once you found out he found out was on the iPad, then you called the police.
I called the police after multiple messages and calls from everybody.
About what was on the iPad.
Not about what was on the iPad. I'm being disturbed.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm being disturbed at work.
Okay.
Disturbed. Okay, thank you. But the messages that were disturbing you were about the messages about what he found on the iPad. Right?
I did.
We have the messages. I mean, that's, you wanted us to see them, so.
It speaks for itself.
So you see him at your house at the door, you continue to get your food and go to work. Then he texts you about Nate and George and whoever and the other people. That's when you call the police. After that, right?
I call the police whenever I'm not able to work.
So when they allow you at work to carry your phone, you have your phone with you?
Yes.
So that's what was disturbing you, for your phone
Yes.
at work.
Yes.
And the only reason you called the police because you were being disturbed at work,
And because my privacy is being invaded.
because your privacy was being invaded because somebody looked at the pictures of you on the iPad.
It's not just about the iPad.
When you said earlier that there was times when you stayed with Eric and his family, correct?
Yes.
And then you said that his mother helped you get out of the apartment. Was that am I correct if you stayed with Eric those times because you didn't feel safe at your apartment?
Elaborate?
There were some other threats towards you, or not towards you, but that
Yes.
concerned you And because of that, sometimes you stayed with Eric because of these other threats, right?
Yes,
And then also that's the reason you had his mom help you get out of the apartment because of these other threats, correct?
Yeah.
And those had nothing to do with Eric. Is that correct? Okay. Yes, it did, or no, it didn't. I'm sorry.
yes, it did have, no, it didn't have
Okay,
anything.
okay. How long had you been in that apartment?
Since April of last year,
So from April to
December,
December, so about 4 months?
longer, April of 2020.
Oh, you're right. My bad. April to December of that year. But part of that time you still stayed with Eric and his family, even when you had the apartment.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have, Judge.
We have no further questions, Judge, and she may be excused.
All right. Any objections to excusing the witness?
No.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, state, call your next witness.
State has no further witnesses, Your Honor.
All right, defense, any witnesses? Do you need to discuss that?
I'm out.
Sure. Defense. Is the probation officer excused?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem. Defense, since it's almost 6 PM and since the state has no more witnesses, we can continue this tomorrow. You can discuss whether
Okay.
your client is going to testify or not, or if you have other witnesses.
Okay, Judge.
And so I will call you all back tomorrow morning.
What time would you like us here, Judge?
If you all could be here no later than 10.
10 o'clock. Okay, we'll be here, Judge. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
May we be excused until 10?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Corazón de Jesús. Padre nuestro